I will start out by admitting that I kind of don't see the hype with the book. So I'm going into watching this movie hoping that the movie is better than the book. Welcome to my book versus movie for The Woman in the Window. Welcome back, or if you are new here, welcome. My name is Katrina and I make bookish content here on this channel at least twice a week, and then movie reviews here at the weekend. In the description box below you will find all of my social links, including my blog and my Goodreads, where I review most of the books that I read. And I love making book versus movie videos. They are always spoiler free, and I will leave my playlist linked up above in case you have missed any. As always, going into a book versus movie, I completely understand that when an author signs over the rights to their work, that the movie or TV show can be completely different from what the book was like. They can change the title, they can change the characters. It's just that idea that they are signing over. However, I love to look at the similarities and differences and bring them to you here, and you seem to like to watch that. So here we go. Yes, was not a massive fan of the book. However, I did literally finish listening to the book late on Thursday night and watched the movie straight away on Friday. So this is like a fresh off the presses book, then start watching the movie. This movie is like so well cast. It had so many people in it. And Amy Adams is our main character. She plays Dr. Anna Fox, who is agoraphobic, and then she witnesses something. However, she is the classic unreliable narrator because she has these anxiety issues, which she takes medication for, and she also loves a glass of wine. And so we kind of like follow her story of what she sees in the apartment across the road from her. She has a tenant who lives in her basement. It all sounds very creepy. I will start off by saying that the book is definitely a psychological thriller. It is one of those books where I feel like the action was all kind of crammed into the ending. We had kind of a sort of fairly slow pace of like things happening and her not being trusted throughout the beginning of the book, and then there's a lot of action in that like final act. And I would say the film does the same thing as well. It's only an hour and 40 minutes, and so there definitely is a big difference in the level of detail between the book and the film. The audiobook for this one I think was like 13 hours, so it wasn't a short audiobook. But yeah, the film comes off more as a psychological thriller in part, but then ends up definitely being more of a horror, and at times almost feels like a kind of B-movie hammer horror type of thing. And so to me, you're not getting a psychological thriller novel translated into a psychological thriller movie. You're getting a psychological thriller novel translated into a film that's trying to be a horror film. You can tell we've got those kind of like knife sounds. Now, the book was very much influenced by Hitchcock movies. Anna in the film and the book watches Hitchcock movies. I've heard a couple of interviews with the author where he talks about the Hitchcock influence and how his future work will be Hitchcock influenced as well. And so there's kind of like knife sounds, and like, you know how in Psycho we get that dun 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 dun, like we have things like that in this film, which I'm like, you're trying too hard to be Psycho, I think, at some points. The film's also very much influenced by Rear Window and Vertigo, and the book, I know, leans more towards the Vertigo influence rather than the Rear Window influence, so that was interesting. Then definitely that Hitchcock thing is the same across both. Anna's character is very much the same across both. There's a few details that have changed, like the apartment numbers and the kind of the location where Anna sometimes like sees and does some things, but on the whole there's quite a few things that are exactly the same. Like the skylight in her house plays a big role in both, and the description of the skylight in the book is very much the same as what the skylight is that we see in the film. And then we have the name of the cat, and then the type of camera that Anna has as well. I like the fact that she talks specifically about her Nikon in the book, and then it is the same in the film. So I like those attentions to detail. I thought that was very good. And then watching the movie right after having finished reading the book, you can see all the sort of foreshadowing that's taken place. So I think it's probably one of those books where if you reread it, you might have a bit of a deeper appreciation of it. But I feel like I watched the film, and so I could see some of that foreshadowing taking place. Again, no spoilers. Yeah, some of the like little details that are missing. Anna is part of an online sort of forum in the book that is for people who are agoraphobic, and they are aware that she is a psychologist on there, and so she kind of ends up giving out advice on there. And that's kind of one of the key plot points that, although it's a detail that's left out for timing reasons probably, I think it is key to some of the stuff that happens later on in Anna's story. And so it's interesting that they left it out of the film. The other detail is that she has a sort of physiotherapist, chiropractor type of person that comes and gives her some physical therapy in her house. And again, she is a sort of sounding board for Anna. She talks through quite a lot of things, and the fact that she's missing from the film, where she is kind of a key person in the book, again, is an interesting choice. Then we have the character of David, and David is a sort of bit of a loner character. He lives, you know, in her basement. He's her tenant, and he does come up in the book a few times. However, I feel like his role in the film has been changed slightly and elevated a little bit. He comes in at some key points, and his character is very much more like sort of sketchy and made out to be like definitely a bad guy in the film. However, I think he's more of a neutral entity in the book. A lot of the things that we see him do and say, and the way Anna perceives him in the film, is verging onto the kind of evil. He's definitely made to kind of dress like so in the is it El Paradiso, the film where Chris Hemsworth sort of comes out of the rain and he's got a knife, it's like a horror film. You know, David, I feel like, is often wet, and so he embodies that kind of like evil, like almost like when in The Shining, where he's been out in the snow and he's a bit wet and it's kind of evil. He's made out to be much more of a bad guy in the film than he is in the book. And that's the only character I feel like they made sort of deeper. As I say, the leaving out of the forums and the physio gives us less of a depth in the plot. I feel like we don't get to see as much of the neighbours in the film as we do in the book. This is the part where it gets to be like quite difficult to keep spoilers out, but we're still keeping spoilers out, don't worry. So I feel like we get to see a lot more of the people who live across the street that in the book than we do in the film. And so when we get to the ending of the film, how it all transpires at the end feels a lot more kind of convenient in the film, whereas in the book there's a lot of like, oh, this happened because of this, and I remember this happening, so that means that this has happened, and we know this about this person and this about this person, so that decision at the end, oh, that makes sense because that's something that they would do, and we know that about their character. Because we don't get to see those characters as much, I feel like we really didn't get to know those characters, and so a lot of what they're doing and saying, you're like, well, where's that come from, and why is that relevant, and why this now? And again, the ending is very much like Hammer horror, like sort of almost like your kind of classic 90s teen horror type things, whereas the book, the ending is a lot more kind of clever and feels like well thought out. And yeah, it's like, well, where's their motive come from for doing this? Where's their motive for doing that? And so it must have been interesting to film, because I would imagine that the characters would read the book so they can kind of get to know those characters in depth, and then to have them lacking some of that motivation and some of that essential plot in the film must have been interesting for them. So yeah, I feel like the pacing of the movie was definitely a little better. The sort of psychological thriller, as I say, aspect of the book meant that it was slower paced, but all the action happens in the third act. I feel like there's definitely a lot more action in the film, which again is to be expected because it's an hour and 41-minute film. But at the same time, you get to the end, and if you hadn't read the book, I think there's a lot of detail that would be missing, and suddenly, yeah, it all gets very violent and you're like, where did that come from? It's interesting as well that on the sort of Netflix screen, the three characters who are credited, you know, when it comes up before the movie, the three actors who are credited even are Amy Adams, Gary Oldman, and Anthony Mackie. And we only actually get to kind of see Anthony Mackie in two very small scenes. And I'm like, so why is he credited quite so much? Like, again, Gary Oldman is in it quite a bit, but there are other characters who come up more frequently, and so I feel like they should be credited more. I just thought that was interesting as well. But yeah, overall, those are the similarities and differences. I cannot see me recommending the book or the film to you. I cannot see me rereading the book. I cannot see me rewatching the film. I think there are much better psychological thrillers out there, and there are much better adaptations of some of those psychological thrillers, and adaptations in the works of some of these things as well. So yeah, I was a little bit disappointed that I'd spent my time doing that. However, I'm glad that I could bring the comparison to you here. As always, if there is a particular book to movie adaptation you would like to hear my thoughts on, if it's not in that playlist, which I will also leave in the end screen, then do let me know in the comments. I'm always happy to put the time in to make the comparisons, even if I don't end up liking either. I will be back with more bookish content for you very soon, so make sure you are subscribed, and I will be back with more movie reviews at the weekend, so hit that notification bell to be notified as soon as those videos go up. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. If not, give it a thumbs down, but let me know in the comments why. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you with that next video.